Hello everybody, my name's Andy and I'm here to do a video review on the Kinemini 4K cinema camera. Now, if you were like me, you probably never heard of this camera before, and then you saw it, and it had amazing specs, and when you searched online there was no reviews about it, and that was there probably still isn't any reviews about it by the time I release this video, but I'm here because I bought this camera and I wanted to show you guys what I don't like about it, what I like about it, and basically give you a review about it because there's almost no reviews on it. So, to begin, I had this camera for a while now, around 3, 4 months, and I shot a bunch of things with it. Small short film. I tested everything with it. So right now, I want to give you an in-depth analysis of the camera. So I'm going to show you the menu options of the camera. I'm going to show you all its features and everything like that, and the stuff that they don't show on the website. Now, one of the most important things that I'm going to talk about, and what you probably want to know is, I'm going to talk about the low light features of the camera, and I'm going to show you test footage at the end. And yes, let's get started with the review. Before I start though, I want to say that I am still a film student. So because of this, I might not know everything there needs to be about cinema cameras. I'm going to work with a red in the future in about a month, but that's in a month, not right now. Previously, I only worked with the Canon 5D, Blackmagic, and those types of cameras. So let's begin. Alright, let's talk about the menu. So if you look here, so before I begin, when you buy this camera, it does not come with a monitor, and the camera does not feature a monitor. Just like the Red Epic, it doesn't have a monitor. So if you intend to buy this, buy a monitor first that you can rig up. It accepts HDMI and 3G SDI cables. Another thing is that the camera itself has no internal battery. So if you were to buy this camera, you would have to purchase either the battery grip or buy an on-camera battery for it. I strongly recommend buying one of these because the battery grip only lasts about an hour, hour and a half, depending on how much voltage batteries you get. These are the type of batteries that you will have to purchase in order to use the battery grip. They're bigger than a 4A battery, but they're rather they last a long time. Three of them fits inside the battery grip, and it lasts around an hour, hour and a half. And they're pretty cheap. They're around $24 for three. Now let's actually take a look at the monitor now. To access the menus, you would have to use the control stick or control knob that the Kinemini 4K has. So to use it, you push up, down, down, left, just like how a video game makes you do commands. So there's settings options here, playback, and zoom function. And when you purchase the battery grip as well, you also have a few more options, such as record from here, zoom in from here, changing iris and shutter, ISO here, and yeah. So this is the menu options that you're greeted with when you start the camera. When you start the camera though, I want to note that it takes around 10 to 20 seconds to turn on. So if you're in a run and gun situation, this might not be ideal. But if you're in a controlled environment, this should not be a problem at all. So let's start out with the options that you can control with the knobs on the camera. So if you click the knob once down, it goes to full screen mode. And if you click it again, you go to full screen, absolute full screen mode. Now, if you return to the first menu, you'll see that it displays histograms, color histograms, and highlight histograms. Then it shows the codecs, the codec that's using the if the SSD is active or not, the GB or data that remains, the voltage and temperature of the camera, if it's recording or not, the time it's been on, if it's, and the slate. The camera has an in-camera slate to begin with. So let's begin to the other options such as ISO, frame rate, and such. So this this camera has a distinct learning curve, and this distinct learning curve will take a few weeks or a few days to master, depending how much you play with it. It is nothing. So if you've been using the Canons or Nikon or the 5D or the Blackmagic, this will seem completely different. It's very close to the RE or Red from what I heard. So if you click the knob up once, you go to your frame rate. I mean, you go to your shutter speed. From there, the shutter at 4K, the shutter can go to 24, 25, and on until you can go to 1 out of 2000. And right now, it actually captures enough light. Now, I'll talk about the low light settings after. So if you press up again, you go to the hard drive, deactivate or activate the hard drive. Now, the thing is that this camera uses SSDs. Now, I would definitely recommend deactivating the hard drive before you shut off the camera. Otherwise, when you bring it into your computer, you run the risk of having corrupted files. So definitely deactivate the hard drive before you finish shooting, or every few times, and then reactivate it. Now, you only get two options with the up button from the knob. So if you go to the right, you get your ISO. Now, this is the part that everybody wants to hear about. So at 4K, the lowest that you can go to is at 250 ISO. Now at 2K, it can go to 160 ISO as the lowest. So from 250, you can go 320, 400, 500, 640, 800. It's the native ISO on the 4K 4K format is 320. On 2K, it's 800. So 1000, 1280, 1600, 2000, 2560, 3200, 4000, 5, 6. Well, you get the point. It goes pretty high. The highest ISO is actually 16,000 for 4K. It goes higher for 2K or in the different modes it shoots at. One thing to mind in particular is that this camera is it is very, very versatile, but it is very, very versatile in the way that if you want to increase something else has to suffer. And we'll talk more about that later. So if you click to the left, left again, you go to frame rate. Right now we're at 4K. This is where it gets interesting because it shoots in a large number of resolutions. So it shoots at true 4K, unlike the Blackmagic 4K, which is UHD. But then you can go to, this is 4K scope. Then you can go to UHD scope. I don't know what 2.8. I'm sure that's something. This 2K scope, HD wide, not 720, but scope 720, and this resolution. Now, as you can see, 2K mode, HD mode, and 4K mode, it's uncropped. So you use the same sensor size for those three formats. Other formats, for example, it also shoots in 3K. When you use 3K, it goes to the micro four third. It uses micro four third of the sensor. So if you want to use those lenses, you can. So one more time, you go. Let me change the shutter speed back to normal. That it's too high right now. So after another hit on the knob, you go to frame rates. Right now, it also has a huge number of frame rate options for you to choose from, depending on what modes and what settings you have. So right now we're in the film 23.976 frame rates per second. Then you can go 24, 25, 29.97 video format, 30, and that's all you have for 4K. Now, these now you also have, if you hit the knob down once, you go to your white balance settings. Now, in the options, you can choose a more advanced white balance settings. Right now, I'm using the simplified, much like the Canon white balance settings ish, tungsten, daylight. If you go to advanced settings, you can individually pump up the white balance temperature. So if you hit it one more time, you go to your live view options. You can custom edit these to how you want your display to look. Now, how the output of how you want your display to look. I haven't messed with these, and I don't know if I recommend messing with these because they're pretty fine the way it seems to be right now. Now, if you hit backwards, you go to your LUTs. Right now, I'm shooting complete raw, which is the kind log. If you go into your kind color, it's the company that made this Kinfinity's two LUTs that it has, kind 709 and kind color. Now, if you take a USB and you stick it in the camera, you can load custom LUTs such as the red LUT or Ari LUT, any Sony LUTs, any type of LUT you can load in, which is very, very helpful. Now, that's all for the options that you can choose from the LUT. Now, those are all the options that you can choose from right now from the knobs. That's a pretty large amount of options. And notice I'm turning down the f-stop through the lens. So let's go into the menu settings. So if you click on the menu button, a tab comes up, and you can individually select these by pushing down the knob. Let's start with shooting. Shooting, you have your default codecs. It goes through, it has three codecs right now that you can choose from: the Cinema DNG, Cineform, and Kind Raw. Now, you can't use Cineform at 4K because it only shoots for around 10 seconds, then stops. But you should use Cinema DNG or Kind Raw. Now, these are all raw codecs, as in it preserves all the detail and there's no compression to it. Because the compression systems that you will use later is all on the workstation that you do on your laptop. So right now, it is uncompressed data, and at most it preserves all the colors. So it's 12-bit color output right now, 444, which is very impressive. And if you shoot in Kind Raw, which is the company codecs, it's a visually lossless codec. You can convert this to Cineform, Cineform 444, or Cinema DNG later, which is very helpful. Now it has a slate which can automatically edit yourself, but it takes a long time. I haven't done it myself. And when you finish shooting, it comes with a slate with the video, so you can check what ISO, what shot this was, what anything of it was after you film and in the files. So let's go back. So after that, you have your custom sensor FPS. That is what the live view is. What I'm guessing, I actually don't know. Then you have your project FPS, which is just like the knob settings, but you can change in the menu. Now you have your image format. This is where it gets interesting, and I will spend a great deal talking about this. Now, if you want to skip ahead to the test footage or low light tests, or other information about the camera, skip ahead right now because I'm going to go in depth about the menu options. So right now you can choose between Super 16, Super 35, and the high speed Super 35. Now, for example, if you choose the high speed mode, this is the mode that has the global shutter-ish type. It's used when you want to film slow motion and when you want to get rid of rolling shutter. I'll talk about rolling shutter later, but right now, for example, if you go in high speed mode, your shutter speed can only go 1/30th instead of the 1/24th that was before. So let's change that to 250, and let's change our. See, this knob thing might take a while to get used to, but it's very easy to get used to. So let's shoot at 2K. Now right now my f-stop is at 4. Let me turn it to, no, I'm changing the focus on the camera now. Let's change it to f-stop 2. And let's get the ISO to 800. Now, what I want to say first is that in high speed mode, you have less low light options. For example, in 2K mode, I would say is the best settings for low light. But at 4K, you notice more grain at higher ISOs, while in 2K, you have a lot less grain. At high speed mode, you suffer from the same thing. Now, this noise is not severe. It is just like in the Red Epic or ARRI. The camera has no in-camera noise reduction system. Like in the Canon cameras, they all have in-camera noise reduction. And one thing I want to say about the noise in this camera that I'm going to say later on is that the noise is very film-like. It's not vertical noise, it's not block noise like in DSLR footage. It is filmicky noise. It's very nice actually, except at higher levels. So this is the 2K mode. Let me show you the frame rate. So right now at the high speed mode, there's 20. You have your standard up to 30. Then you have 48, 50, 59, 60, and 92. 92 is the highest that you can go on 2K. But notice if you change the resolution to 2K scope, which is a cinematic, well, it has a different aspect ratio. Now if you do this, you can change the frame rate at 2K scope all the way up to 120 frames. I'll show you test footage with this later on in the video. So let's go back to the menu. So sensitivity mode. This camera has EI mode and ISO mode. EI mode is when you use the native sensitivity of the camera and you adjust from there. And ISO mode multiplies the light coming from the pixels, something like that. I'm not gonna go in depth about that right now. So these are the ISO highlight stops. This is something that I was unfamiliar with in the beginning, and it's something that I want to talk about. This is a setting to, for example, if you're losing detail to clipping in higher overexposed areas, you can edit these settings to regain a lot of detail back. And if you're losing detail to noise in darker areas, you can crank it up and get back some detail. Now, I don't know completely about how this works, but I'll show you footage about the differences between the highest and lowest. Note that at higher, it changes your ISO. Now, Kinemini recommended me to stay to 3.6 at 1.3 for low light shooting and basically everything else, at least. Now, you have your EF iris controls that you can control if you have a Canon EF lens. Right now, I'm using the Rokinov prime lenses. So you can save your settings as well. Now let's move to the second tab in the guide menu. So right now you see guide, which is basically you can change the live view square. You can change it. You can change your safe zones, crosshairs and such. You can also enable color bars to calibrate your monitor. You can open rule of thirds, which is if you don't like the safe zones, you can use this to white balance your monitor as well. So that's it for the guide section. Now let's go to live view. Live view is what you can see on your monitor. So you can customize your white balance, but I'm not going to do that right now. So you can edit your histogram settings, your zebra patterns. I'm not sure what the zebra patterns actually do because they get the highlight parts. Okay, so overexposed areas you can see, and you can magnify. You can if you're using if you're using a fisheye lens or amorphic lens, you can adjust accordingly, which is really neat. I haven't tried it yet. You can edit your video output 720 or 18 or HD. You can change your shutter mode to time to angles, like in the Black Magic, which is it's very useful actually. The camera gives you a lot of customization abilities, which I think is absolutely great. Now here is the color temperature settings that I talked about earlier. You can go to full, which gives you, let's go there. So it gives you by the hundreds, so you can edit for days, but I like to keep it simple right now because I don't need it that accurate for my run and gun type of stuff right now. Where is it? So let's change this back to simple. And raw MF zoom, I'm not sure what that is actually. I apologize for that. So now here's where you can load your custom LUTs, and you can edit how you want your LUTs to look like, or such as this. If you have a USB plugged in, you press this button to get it out. So audio, this is something I want to talk about with the camera. The camera has bad audio quality, as in it doesn't support all the mics that you would imagine, and it also doesn't pick up as much as you want. Right now, I have it set at the highest, which is 30 decibels up, 30 decibels. It starts out in 15. You might want to crank it higher because I have lots of footage that doesn't have high enough audio. So here you can customize your playback levels, monitor levels, and such. If you want to use it with the monitor, if you want to record audio on this camera, you're going to definitely have to buy a Zoom or an audio recorder that you can connect to the camera and sync with it, which the camera accepts, which is great. And yes, you can do playback, monitor, audio levels, and such. Sorry about just now, my white balance on my recording camera was improperly set. So after that, you have sync, which is the tally light beeper on recording beep if you don't want to hear the beep when you press record, which there is. And lastly is the system preferences. So you have settings. Note that the Kinemini 4K has a fan, and if you get up close to it, you can hear it. Now you can adjust this to fan speed to 10 to 100, and if you don't even want it on, you can tell the fan to turn off while recording or never. Now this is something interesting. The camera has a Wi-Fi option port that lets you connect to an iPad with the app, and it lets you change the settings from there. I'll show you this in a minute. Now it lets you change the resolution, codec, such and such, but it's not a live view. Now it does all of that. For example, if you're carrying the camera and your first AD is behind you, he can change the ISO settings and such when you can't or cannot do that. Now I think that's great. Now it's SDI power. If you have an SDI cable, I encountered this problem when I first bought this monitor. If it's turned off, it won't connect to the camera, and I thought the monitor was disabled. So turn this off first. Now system time code free run. You can set this to yeah, you can set the system time and everything. I'm not going to do that. I don't know how to get out of it now. Okay, actually, yeah. Okay. So, let's go back to system, factory reset, settings. So you can do language, you can use DC threshold, battery threshold. For example, if your DC gets lower than this, it will shut off. If your battery grip gets lower than this, it will shut off. I don't recommend shooting with the battery grip unless you buy the recommended batteries on the website. Not the yellow ones that I showed you, but the black ones from Panasonic, I think. They give a constant output of 12 volts with for the battery grip. It gives a constant output for the camera, and those other batteries, such as the yellow one, when it's low on battery, it goes to around 8 volts or 6 volts, so the camera turns off. I've run into this many times before I got the battery. So that's it for settings. Now you can calibrate, dead pixel removal, monitor fine tune. I actually have not used that. So you can use this to tune your monitor. I'll probably be doing this after. Now you can update firmware, factory reset, about. Now you can see what serial number, everything like this is. So right now the firmware version is 3.2. At the time, they're going to release a new firmware in about a month or two that probably solves the audio issues. So the audio issues might not be relevant after this review. So that's all for the camera configurations at the moment. Now let's get into actually, lastly, let's talk about the playback options. So you have playback options to show I was shooting a sunset, which is pretty beautiful actually on the camera. And playback, you can basically playback, delete, and etc. That's not really that important. Now, after you've seen all the settings, I just want to restate the pros and cons of the camera. So let's talk about the pros. And there are lots of pros. So this camera shoots in 12-bit footage, 12-bit color, uncompressed. It also shoots in true 4K, not UHD. And it can also shoot in UHD. It has a large spectrum of resolutions you can choose from. Resolutions. It also has slow motion up to 120 frames per second. Slow motion. Before I go in more depth about the pros, I just want to state how much the camera costs. Most of you probably already know how much the camera costs. It costs $3,500 for the body. And this entire setup though costs around $10,000. I know that's mostly because I got a really good monitor. Now, if the camera body itself costs $3,500, and that's pretty cheap for a 4K camera. That's just as good as the Blackmagic, just a tad bit more expensive. So when you buy this camera, you only get the camera body. Now if you want the basic kit comes with the cage and the battery grip and the slider and riser that lets you connect to the tripod. Now that costs around 5,000, 4,000. I'm not sure. I've not bought that one. I bought the Pro kit, which cost around 6,400. It might have changed from here. So with the Pro kit, you get the cage, you get the battery grip, you get the Wi-Fi module, and with the Pro kit you get a lot actually. And if you looked at the website, it will tell you everything you'll get. You'll get the cage, the battery grip, the camera, the slider, the riser, the basic rods, and just many more options that you'll get. And actually, the Pro kit is very worth it. It also comes with 3 SSDs. Note the SSDs come enter from here. It comes with three 120 GB kind mags, which is custom made for the camera. And if you know from the Blackmagic, SSDs are pretty expensive and they'll run around $300, $400 for a decent one. Now this comes with the kit, three of them. In the box, it also comes with, it comes in a very, let me show you right now actually. This is the box that the Kinemini actually comes in. It's a very handy box to carry around everything in. It comes with the camera in the cage, the kind mags, and it also comes with an SSD reader. It also comes with an SSD reader where you can read the files from your computer. So that is the very sturdy box actually. Now, you can go online and you can see what the Pro Kit has to offer, and that's what I recommend. Now, the Pro Kit does not include the 4K option. No, if you buy this camera, you have to purchase the in-camera option, which lets you shoot in 4K. That's around $699. Otherwise, it is a very good 2K camera. If you also have to purchase the high-speed option, which is $699 also, which lets you shoot at slow motion 120 frames per second. Now, this is actually something that I very recommend buying. So the camera is very versatile, but the price range is also very versatile. Now, if you're gonna get everything that I have right now, you also have to purchase the Move Cam kit on the website. It's $1,300 is on sale right now. It comes with a shoulder mount, the more rods, battery plate, and the barn doors follow focus, which is very useful, a platform for your monitor, and that's about it actually. But I actually think it's very worth it. Now, if you do the calculations, if you buy the Pro Kit, that's around $6,500, and you buy the MovCam kit, that's another $1,500. So, in essence, you'll be using, to get this camera fully set up, you'll be using around $8,000, $9,000. But that's if you want everything you have here. Now, if you just want to get it set up, you can buy the basic kit, buy the shoulder. You can also buy the shoulder rig, which is around $300. Buy the basic kit, the shoulder rig, battery plate, and the battery, and you'll probably and the monitor. You'll probably get the camera and everything you need for around around 5,000, 6,000. Just like the Blackmagic, you need a lot of things to make this thing work. Now, so yes, it is very cost effective for what it does though. It is probably the only camera in this price range to shoot slow motion up to 120 frames and shoot 4K, which is something very unique, and it is exactly what I'm looking for. One of the last things I want to talk about before I start showing you guys test footage and footage that I'll discuss later is the Lowlight. This camera is absolutely amazing at low light because it can go to such high ISOs. Now, with its low light, you might have to purchase a denoising software, just if you don't like the grain that it gives. Now, this camera captures a lot of light. I needed to lower the f-stop to around 5 or 6 and get filters just because the camera was getting too much light at some points. And that was shooting at sunset, which is very impressive. Now you can adjust it accordingly to shoot during daytime, which is completely fine. But I just want to state that the low light is amazing, and you'll see later on in the video through an extensive low light test. Now, I know there's many more pros, but let's start talking about cons. The one thing, in every camera there's always setbacks, and the one thing that I would consider bad is the rolling shutter of the camera. The camera has At 4K, the camera has pretty severe rolling shutter. At 2K, the rolling shutter is decent but noticeable. Now I know it has the high speed option to get rid of the rolling shutter, but there's still a tiny bit of rolling shutter still in there. Now I'm going to do a rolling shutter test in the video, and I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. Now, another con is definitely the sound. But if you're buying this camera, you're probably going to have a sound person. Other than that, it's not that big of a problem unless you buy a zoom, which you can directly attach to the camera, which is perfect. Now, that is actually all the cons that I think about with this camera, because the camera is absolutely amazing. Actually, I'm very impressed by the camera and the options it gives me. It gives me more options than any other camera I've ever seen. The only other con I could think of actually is accessibility. You probably never heard of this camera, and a lot of people don't know about this camera, and it's sad because this camera is absolutely amazing. Now, if you want to order it though, you have to order from the Kinemini website, and you have to go through this extensive way to get it shipped to you. Now, I'm not I got it through my parents in China. They ordered it through a Chinese bank account, and it was shipped here. Now, you can email the Kinemini people about how to get the camera in the US, but people in Europe right now are using it, and they're very content with it. Now, I don't know when they'll have American retailer, but right now there's no third party seller for this camera. One more thing that I forgot to discuss about was it has 13 f-stops at 2K and 12 f-stops at 4K, which is around the same as the Blackmagic, if not better at 2K though. So before I finish off and show you guys test footage, I want to talk to you about the image quality. The image quality and the image that it produces is very similar to the RE actually. I think they definitely made this to be an RE clone. I'm going to put a link into the description showing the previous kind camera compare against the RE Red Epic, Blackmagic, and I'll put in the link below, and you can test for yourself. Now, one thing that I want to talk about the camera is that there's no more. So if you're used to the 5Ds more, there's none of it. There's no anti-aliasing unless you go to high speed mode, which again is compromising a little bit, but it's hard to notice. Interesting enough, the logo for this camera is the alternative. This camera is definitely an alternative for the RE, the Red Epic, the Blackmagic, and etc. It is in the middle ground between the Blackmagic and I would say the Red Epic. This finishes off this portion of the review. Without further ado, I'm going to show you guys the image quality produced in the camera. I'm going to show you some video that I shot in Sweden, Stockholm, and later on I'm going to show you Lowlight that I shot in Shanghai, and then I'm going to show you the image quality and slow motion that I shot here in Savannah. Now, take note that the Lowlight test and the test I did in Sweden, I set my shutter speed to 1 every 24, so there is a lot of motion blur in those tests. Now, thank you for watching my review, and from the footage that you just saw, as you can see, the image quality is amazing, and especially the low light and slow motion tests. Now, if you have any more questions about the camera, feel free to comment, ask for additional footage. This is probably not the last piece of footage that I'll show from this camera, and I really hope you like this review because it's also my first camera review, so I apologize for some of the mistakes, but I hope you liked the review. I hope it convinced you to buy one of these cameras because honestly, I think this is one of the best cameras on the market that you can get right now at this price range. Now, thank you for watching my review and like and subscribe, I guess.